I think everybody would agree that there are too many distractions in the world, making it hard to focus on what you actually want to be doing.
Mildly ironic coming from you.
You know what? Yes, it is. And that is why I will try literally anything to help me. And so we got sent this green drink called Magic Mind to try out. It's a mental performance shot. The idea behind it is that it gets you focused and mentally clear and motivated while reducing stress. And they do this with mushroom nootropics and adaptogens, plus over 100% of your daily vitamin C and D per bottle. The vitamin D is key because everybody, including both of us, we have had doctors tell us at various points that we both have vitamin D deficiencies. So this is a really good, easy way to just get my vitamin D in the morning. So they've included herbs in Magic Mind's formula that provides safe and effective stress reduction, a sense of calmness, and a lifted mood without hurting your energy stores. I take my shot and I would just feel, good and ready to go. It tasted good and I really enjoyed it.
And for somebody that wakes up way before the sun comes up, it was the same thing. I would start my coffee, go to the fridge, get one of these shots. It would immediately start working way faster than caffeine. And it just generally picked me up before I had my coffee.
So if you are interested in trying it out, you have a limited offer you can use now that gets you up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off one-time purchases with the code TheyWereGone20 at checkout. You can claim it at magicmind.com/TheyWereGone. And we have all of this in the show notes too, so you can click the link and it'll take you right there. And you can try out Magic Mind for yourself.
Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
On August 2nd, 2024, Manassas Park Police visited the Virginia home that Mamta Kafle shared with her husband, Naresh Bhatt. They were there because Mamta didn't show up to work at UVA Health Prince William Medical Center on August 1st, and her colleagues were concerned. Naresh allegedly told police that Mamta had disappeared before and that he didn't want to file a missing persons report. 3 days later, on August 5th, Naresh finally reported his wife missing, but Manassas Park Police didn't make this public until August 8th. Since then, the community has banded together to do ground searches, hold vigils, press conferences, and even visit the Nepal embassy, all in hopes of finding out what happened to Mamta Kafle. When a person goes missing, there's a special kind of pain in the not knowing. I want to tell you the stories of those who never came home. Today, I want to tell you the story of Mamta Kafle. I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
And this is And Then They Were Gone. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you for joining us once again. I'm Kona.
And I'm Ethan.
And we're the husband and wife team behind this podcast. Each week, I tell you the story of an unsolved missing persons case. Ethan doesn't know anything about the case going into the episode, usually, and he's here to provide his reactions and questions in real time, hopefully asking some of the same ones you have at home. Now, I say usually because, as you'll quickly find out, Ethan does know about this case.
I do.
Yeah, because this week's episode is not the one that we had planned. We usually don't cover super new missing persons cases because, as we've said many times, this podcast is about unsolved cases, and 99% of missing persons cases are solved relatively quickly. However, over the years, we've made a few exceptions. We covered Gabby Petito before she was found, and when my high school friend Steve Causey went missing in Florida last year, we covered that as well. This episode isn't about somebody I know, but her story has really struck me. Mamta Kafle is a young mom who lives about 45 minutes from us. As I mentioned in the intro, she was officially reported missing on August 5th, 2024, and the story seemed extremely fishy right from the start. I started following it, and after a few days, decided that I wanted to help however I could. So yesterday, August 15th, yes, we are recording this basically and then turning it around, editing it, and releasing it. So yesterday, August 15th, Ethan and I attended a civilian-led ground search for her in Manassas Park. So what we're going to do this week is talk about what we know so far about Mamta's disappearance and talk about our experience at the search yesterday. Now, if you've never listened to our show before, this is not what it's usually like. Typically, I do a lot of background research and write an entire script. But this week, there is no script, just some screenshots, notes, and us talking about our experience yesterday. So with all that, let's get into the story of Mamta Kafle. All right, so this is going to be very off the cuff this week and very different. So I guess the best way to start would be to talk about the timeline as we know it.
Yeah, I think that would, I mean, really, that's about all that we have at this point is just the timeline.
Yeah, and a lot of things kind of related to the timeline, which of course we'll talk about. Just a little bit of a background on Mamta. Mamta and her husband are both Nepali. So they were both born in Nepal, and they have been married for about 3 years. They share a daughter who is 11 months old. And from everybody who knows Mamta, like they say she is an absolutely devoted mom. She loves her daughter. And Mamta also works part-time as a pediatric nurse. So not just a nurse, like a pediatric nurse, which I think is just a special type of person. Her husband, Naresh, is a U.S. Army veteran. He works in IT, and from what I understand, he was also a Fairfax County police officer for about a year.
Yeah, I was going to say it was brief.
Yeah, and I don't know a whole lot about that aspect of him, but I do know that in terms of his Army service, he was serving pretty recently because one of Mamta's best friends, Nadia, was actually Mamta's roommate while Naresh was deployed a few years back. So he was being deployed a few years ago. Like I said, they got married about 3 years ago. And in August of 2023, they bought this house together in Manassas Park. And that's where they lived for almost the last year. But from what we understand, based on Facebook posts that Mamta has made, she is very active on social media. Both I've seen posts on Facebook and TikTok. She posted a lot of mainly just her and her baby, but sometimes with Naresh as well. But from what I've seen, she has been having problems in her marriage, and those do date back many months. And some of her friends have talked about how they did not have a great marriage, and they were apparently either going through a separation at one point or contemplating a separation. So we can talk a little bit more about the relationship, but this is the timeline kind of as we know it. Mamta used to work at Inova Fairfax Hospital. She was recently transferred to UVA Health Prince William Medical Center. Now, Mamta doesn't have a car. Her husband has a car, a Tesla, but Mamta apparently Ubered to work.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so he can afford a Tesla, but he can't buy her a car.
Yeah, and we don't know what the dynamic is there.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
But that's just two facts that we know. He has a Tesla, Mamta doesn't have a car. So that's important because there's not a car that we're looking for. Right. In this case. Mamta is missing. There's no automobile that's missing along with her.
Right.
All right. So July 27th, Mamta was last seen at work. So she was scheduled to work the 27th, showed up the 27th. July 28th, friends heard from her. Now, Nadia, the friend that I mentioned earlier, is one of those friends, but she unfortunately did not get to speak with Mamta that day. She had a missed call from her. I think actually maybe a couple of missed calls from her, but they did not connect. The timeline I'm reading from right now is the official police timeline that has been released, okay? So the next item on their timeline is July 31st. 3 days later, Naresh last saw Mamta. Now, in the intro, I talked about the welfare check that the police performed on August 2nd. It was during that, apparently, that Naresh said that he last saw Mamta at their home where they had dinner together on July 31st.
Right. So if we are to believe that, last known sighting is the 31st.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this. Naresh goes to put their daughter to bed, and then that's it.
Right. This is based on an interview he did with USA 9. And I do want to play portions of this interview just so you can hear this in his own words. But yes, from what it sounds like, they had dinner. He put the baby to bed. He went upstairs. He heard Mamta downstairs, but he doesn't know what happened after that. So they often slept apart. And it sounds like maybe they were that night. And so when she never came to bed, that didn't strike him as weird. I think he just assumed that she went to bed elsewhere. And then he apparently did not see her the next morning, and I guess assumed she was at work.
Okay.
But again, we'll play this in his own words here shortly. Assuming that Mamta was at work isn't crazy because she was scheduled to work the next day, August 1st. However, she never showed up. That is incredibly out of character for Mamta, so her colleagues were concerned. On August 2nd, they called police and asked them to do a welfare check. Police responded to a welfare check at Mamta's home, and Naresh was there. They spoke. He did not want to report her missing at that time. And again, I'd rather you just hear it from him instead of my interpretation of what he said. So I'll just say that. Then on August 5th, when Mamta did not come home and nobody could get in touch with her, that is when Naresh did file a missing persons report. Then August 5th through 8th, detectives conducted an extensive investigation into the disappearance. Those are their words.
Okay.
Then August 8th is when Manassas Park PD made this public. And that is how, on August 8th, a lot of people who knew Mamta found out that she was missing, was from the press release that Manassas Park Police put out. And that was at least 8 days after she went missing, if not more.
Right. And we don't know to what extent this quote unquote extensive investigation was.
No, and we'll talk about that more too, because obviously in a case this new, police do not want to give a lot of details, and that makes perfect sense.
Right, because if they're looking at somebody as a suspect, they don't want to tip them off. They want whoever the suspect is to continue to work with them.
Exactly.
Have some sort of faith or trust or whatever so that they can basically catch them in a lie.
Right.
And they also don't want to go around letting information out and accusing anybody of anything
before they really know what's going on.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, because she could come back.
Exactly.
Right.
So with that said, let's now just listen to what Naresh had to say to this reporter.
Do you have any idea where she could be at this point?
Yeah, wherever, I have doubted, I already, personally, I carry my baby, and then personally I went there.
Naresh Bhatt says it's not the first time his wife of 3 years, Mamta Kafle, has disappeared. In fact, he told WUSA 9 she's left their Manassas Park home 3 times in the past.
At that time, we never called police, at that time, altogether 3 times, she went out. At that time, she has a demand because our parents were here, and then she said, she want to send parents back.
But he says she's never been gone this long. He says they ate dinner together the night of July 31st.
It was like normal day. We were taking care of our babies.
That night after dinner, he says he took their baby upstairs and went to sleep. He says that was the last time he saw her. Police say it's the last time anyone saw her.
So she never came to sleep, though?
Yes, she came, I heard, noise, something like that, she came, she was here doing, dishes and then stuff like that, I heard that.
They would sometimes sleep separately, he said, so as not to wake the baby when they got up for work. But the next day, August 1st, police say she didn't show up to work at Inova Fairfax Hospital. On the 2nd, police went to the home and spoke with her husband. He said they told him to keep searching for her since she's gone missing before and call them if he still couldn't find her. On August 5th, he filed a missing persons report.
My baby and then myself, like we are suffering the most.
What do you say to her if she's watching this right now?
If she is watching, come back, whatever is the issue, like we can fix it.
All right. Now, you've never heard him speak before. So what are your impressions based on that interview?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I know I never want to, we've talked about this before. I never want to rush to judgment on anybody's reactions to a high stress situation like this.
Right, because everybody reacts differently. People react in ways that may seem odd, but are completely innocent.
Right. He seems like way too cool, though.
Like kind of annoyed.
Annoyed that the reporter was at his front door?
Yeah. And like just kind of annoyed by the entire situation.
Yeah. There's also some cultural differences here,
absolutely.
So I don't want to rush into any of this, especially based on an interview given at his front door. It seems as though he was kind of caught off guard that reporter was there because he like had his hand on the door the entire time that they were talking, and he kept looking over his shoulder, and at one point you could hear the baby in the back. So, I just his timeline. And him talking about it seems like bullshit.
One of her friends clarified at a press conference that I believe was in front of the police station. But one of her friends clarified that, yes, she had left before, but she never disappeared before. Like, people knew where she was.
Right.
And they had a strained marriage, and she did go to, I believe, a friend's house in Falls Church for 8 days to cool off and to get some space. But people knew where she was.
Right. Well, there's also the fact that she doesn't have a car.
Yeah.
So she Ubers everywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Or, gets rides or whatever. Yeah.
Sure. So if she had a ride with a friend, that friend at this point would have come out and said, hey, she's staying with me.
100%.
If she Ubered somewhere, assuming the police are actually doing their job, they would have records of that.
Right.
Now, I heard, I don't think it was in that interview, but through something that her cell phone is going straight to voicemail.
Yes.
So again, if the police have actually done their job and started investigating, where was the last time her cell phone was pinged? And are there digital receipts for an Uber ride that night? The only other option at that point would be that she just wandered off.
Yeah, which nobody seems to think,
right?
Really.
It just, his story just doesn't make sense.
No. And the thing that I'm unclear on, and I would love if somebody could provide clarification on this, was if the times that she, left before, if that was before or after their baby was born.
Yes, that's
and if she
another
took her
question.
baby with her.
Right.
Because that I'm not sure about. And I think that would be very telling one way or another, because if she's taken off before, even if people didn't know where she was and she didn't take her baby, for instance, that says something.
Yeah.
Or if she took off before and did take the baby, that says something. Or if this is something she did, but
previous
before she had the baby, you know what I mean? Like, that could also tell you a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But that interview was with WUSA 9, and the headline on it was pretty genius. It's, I'm the one who's suffering, which is one of the last things that he said.
Yeah. Well, he said he and the baby, but he said, I'm the one that's suffering.
Yeah.
The most in this.
That's
what he said.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, talking about the Ring cameras, and it's really hard because this is so new. If this is a case that happened 20 years ago, we could really say like, hey, it's weird that the police haven't given us information about whether or not they checked Ring cameras or whatever, or the cell phone records. But it completely makes sense that they wouldn't necessarily give that information out now, this early in the investigation.
Right.
With that said, I think it's important to mention, because we have also covered cases in which police didn't check Ring cameras and CCTV. I think it is always important to mention that if you live in or around the Blooms Crossing neighborhood, which is the neighborhood in Manassas Park where Mamta and Naresh live, and you have a Ring camera, it's so imperative that you check your footage, not just from July 31st when he said she was last seen.
Right.
I would say starting on July 28th.
Yes.
When she was last heard from.
Right.
Because we don't know exactly what happened between July 31st and honestly now.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say
maybe
July 31st to now. Like, check, because something might have happened August 5th. Something weird might have happened on August 10th. Who knows? But I think it's extremely important for everybody in that area to check their security camera footage.
Yeah. And some of that footage, I mean, look, hey, this footage, you may have information out there that proves that she is alive and
left of her own accord.
Exactly. And maybe we have this whole thing wrong and she did actually just walk out that night and maybe a Ring camera caught it, and then that can take the investigation in a completely different direction.
Right.
Or maybe you caught something else that Naresh was doing.
Or that somebody else was doing. Yes. So that's a big thing. Also, if you own a business in the area and you have security cameras on your business, same thing. Because there is a shopping center very close by to the house. And if you're like leaving the neighborhood, you would pretty much go by that. So anybody who has anything, please check it. Obviously, the public doesn't have access to cell phone records from either Mamta or Naresh. So hopefully the police have, like you said, have gotten all of that. As I mentioned, Naresh drives a Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
Teslas have many cameras on them. They record everything.
Yep.
So it would be very easy with a warrant to find out exactly where that Tesla has been. It would also be important to find out if, let's say, there are gaps in the Tesla usage. Like, let's say, for instance, the Tesla was pretty much driven every day, and then maybe one day it wasn't. I'd be curious to know what would be happening on that day. Where Naresh was on that day, what was he doing? Did he have access to another automobile on that day?
Right.
Again, this is just all speculating. We have no evidence of any of that, of course, but...
No, but that's a good way to rule things out.
Right. So let's talk again a little bit about their marriage and a few other details that we do know. Now, I mentioned that the marriage was troubled. Somebody on Facebook, actually, they found me on TikTok, but sent this to me on Facebook. It was a screenshot from February that Mamta made. It was dated February 16th. And it said, "Hi, I have a 6-month-old baby and I'm in process of separation. I work 2 days a week and my husband is not helping to take care of the baby. He is saying that if I leave baby with him, he will send child to custody. Is it possible? I need help for childcare. I need help from social worker and need some advice." So in addition to this post, I have seen screenshots of other posts that were similar, that were in local single moms groups, basically saying she was trying to leave her husband and really needed help on how to do that. Now, I mentioned that Mamta is from Nepal. Her entire family is back there. So while she does have close friends here in the States, she doesn't have familial support here in this country. And I can't imagine how isolating that must be when you're in a house, you don't have your own transportation, and you're in a marriage with a child, a small child, and your husband's apparently threatening you with taking your baby away.
Which is messed up on so many levels if he's actually doing that. Like, not only is it terrifying for her, but why would you threaten her with, if you leave me to take care of the baby, I'm just going to give it up? What the hell?
I don't know.
So if that is the case, and if that's common behavior for him within the marriage, for him to either threaten that or to not take care of the baby, that further goes back to his behavior not adding up.
Right.
Because he said that he took the baby and put the baby to sleep.
Right. And you know what I found interesting is in that same interview, when he says, like, I put the baby to sleep, he also very offhandedly said, like, she does the cooking and the cleaning and the dishes and that type of stuff. So it seems as though they had a very traditional role. And in this post in February, she's saying that her husband doesn't help with the baby.
Right.
Yet,
but then
apparently on
that
this night,
he was taking care of the baby.
and putting the baby to bed, which is one of, honestly, the worst parts of having a kid is trying to put them to bed. Yeah, I found that interesting. There's another post that she posted. Unfortunately, I don't have the screenshot with me. That said that he had actually emptied their joint bank account at one point too. You know, it's like, we don't know what these people's marriage was like.
We don't want to directly accuse anybody, but look, the circumstantial evidence that we do have from social media and from things that her friends have said, it's not looking good for him.
It paints a picture of control.
Yes.
Of coercion, of, I don't know if physical abuse was involved, but if the emptying out the joint bank account so she doesn't have access to money is to be believed, if her not having a car, her not having her own form of transportation, I mean, it certainly points to financial abuse.
Yeah.
Starting on August 8th, when this became public and people in Mamta's life started to understand that she was missing, you know, because also like they were all kind of calling each other too, going like, okay, wait, have you heard from her?
Right.
You know, do you know what's going on? Because I haven't heard from her. So there was a lot of that. Then on August 8th, when this became public, that is when the community really started coming together, because Manassas Park Police put out this statement. They made a poster. I mean, they really didn't say anything on August 8th. They just said that they're asking for the public's help with locating Mamta Kafle. And they made a poster that said that she was last seen on 7/31/2024, Manassas Park, Virginia. She has not had any contact with family or friends since then. And then gave, you know, her height and weight and said that if you know where she is, contact them. That post had 4.2 thousand shares and 465 comments on Facebook. So obviously we're not going to go through all of those, but in a follow-up comment on the 12th, Manassas Park Police said that they are currently investigating the missing adult case involving Mamta Kafle. The case has been assigned to the Investigative Services Division of the Manassas Park Police Department. This case is active and ongoing. What we can share at this time is the following. The investigators have conducted several follow-ups with neighbors, friends, co-workers, and the husband. The investigators are also utilizing several investigative tools to help in an attempt to locate Mamta Kafle. If you have any information, you're asked to contact the Manassas Park Police Department. And then they have, you know, more numbers, which again, we're going to put in the show notes in case any of you have information. But immediately the community was up in arms with how long this information had taken to be disseminated to the public. Because as anyone knows, in a missing persons case, like the first hours and days are absolutely crucial. It was 6 days after the welfare check that Manassas Park Police made this public, and 3 days after the missing persons report was actually filed that they made it public. So that, I think, is part of the reason why the community has come out in full force. So since then, there have been kind of two different groups. So there's the group that I found first, which was formed by Mamta's friend Nadia. And that is the group that we joined yesterday on the search in Blooms Park. There's a second group that is full of fellow Nepalis. So there are two groups that are working very hard. Now, the Nepali group has gone to the embassy to let them know of their concerns. And so the embassy is aware of what's going on.
That's good.
Absolutely. They also did a peaceful demonstration in front of the police department. So they had a bunch of people there. They did their own search of Blooms Park. Basically, you know, they are working in their way as well to get the word out. And both groups are. I mean, both groups are really coming together, and there is overlap between the two groups. The public is very much involved in this. And what we're not seeing, though, is a lot of police involvement.
Right.
So let's talk about the search yesterday.
So I want to start by saying that on my way into work this morning, I heard a news report on WTOP saying that was talking about the search that we had done yesterday. And in that report, they said that police and volunteers from the public had conducted this search.
Well, they must have been real undercover because I didn't see a single damn police officer.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, I was the only cop there.
Yeah.
And I was not acting in a law enforcement capacity in any way.
No, you are not with Manassas Park Police,
No.
to be clear.
Yes, not at all. So I don't know why they said that or where they got that police were involved in the search, because they weren't there.
They were not. Like, there was not a single cruiser.
At one point, somebody thought that they had found some evidence, so the police were called, and they did show up.
Well, we were told they were en route, but I don't know what ever happened with that.
After we had finished the search, when we were in the parking lot, somebody had said that a lot of cruisers came.
Oh, okay. Okay, I missed that.
But they didn't go back into the woods like we were.
No. And they were gone by the time
they
we
were all
done.
gone, yeah.
Because, we never saw them.
And we weren't really in the woods for that long.
No.
I mean, a couple of hours, but like not 5 or 6 hours.
Right.
So it seemed as though the police showed up, quickly realized whatever it was that they got called for was nothing, and then they left.
Yeah.
Nobody else was out there other than civilians.
Yeah, this is a 100% civilian organized and led search. And it was Nadia who did organize it. And she asked somebody at the police department if they were allowed to do a search. And whoever she spoke with was like, well, we can't stop you, but we don't condone it either.
I mean, why wouldn't they just have somebody on hand?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, have one person that's affiliated or familiar with the case just come out. They don't even have to search, but they can be there in case they hear a whistle, and they can respond to whatever evidence may or may not have been found.
Yeah. So I want to talk about why we were searching Bloom Park. There's no evidence that Mamta's in Bloom Park, that anything, happened in Bloom's Park. Like, the only reason that Bloom's Park is being searched is because it's a place that Mamta would go, and it is right by her house. It is also a very large wooded area.
Yes, it's massive.
Massive. It's 279 acres and very dense and forested in places. There are also bodies of water on the property. Now, most of the little streams and creeks that we saw were pretty dry.
Yeah, those looked like they were mainly natural runoff points.
Yeah, so it's not like anybody could really be hidden there, but there's a pretty sizable pond on the property. And we did search around the pond, obviously not in it, but there are a lot of, like we said, very dense areas of the woods. Right.
So in talking about the search, we've got some things going for us and some things going against us. One, we are 2 to possibly 3 weeks behind. It had rained very heavily several times between the time that she was last seen and our search. Any clearing or field had been mowed. So all of those things are factors against the search, against finding
footprints,
brush that had been pushed down to access heavier wooded areas, things like that. This is also a park that is very heavily trafficked just on the regular.
Yeah, it's you can see why. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yes, it's a very popular park. There's lots of walking paths, both paved and unpaved. Just a very nice place to go hiking. So that works in our favor in one way, that people may have stumbled across something.
Right. If something were kind of out in the open,
right,
you would think that somebody would have seen it by now.
But it also means that as we were walking and you saw it, you could tell where people had just been wandering off of these paths into the woods.
Yeah.
So that was all over the place. The rain, obviously, low underbrush that's not woody or twigs, things of that nature can pop back up after you walk over them. So the rain, time delay, all of that is basically gone. However, there was a lot of entry points to the underbrush that had a lot of twigs, had a lot of pricker bushes or jaggers, whatever you
My
want to
ankles
call them.
are torn up
Right.
from those.
So what that's good for us that was searching is that we didn't see a whole lot of evidence, or next to none, of any of that being disturbed in the way that it would have been if somebody had been taking a body or walking through there. There weren't a whole lot of entry points where there were a lot of twigs broken.
Right.
There was a lot of visible entry points into underbrush. That was good for us. That made it kind of easy searching.
Mm-hmm.
Although we did still go into those wooded areas. Not to get too gruesome, but between the time she was last heard from and our search, there were several days that were in the 100-degree plus mark.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it ever went below 80 degrees that entire time.
Not during the day, yeah.
So unless she was buried deeply, we would have been smelling decomposition.
Right.
Which we did not. So the other problems with potentially him taking her body in there is carrying dead weight is very difficult, and that was very rough terrain.
It was. And let's really quickly give people an idea. So according to the missing persons poster, Mamta was about 5 feet tall and 135 pounds. So she was small. She was a small person. I don't know how big Naresh is. I mean, he doesn't look like a big guy based on like the interview, but you know, so it's not inconceivable that he could have carried her somewhere. Right. However, carrying somebody that long of a distance and having to deal with the getting through the brush like we were,
right,
without carrying anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that was hard enough. So you got to think about like how likely it would be that he would have been able to get her back into some of these places.
Right. And I think we were talking about it while we were on the search. Possibilities of him putting her in some sort of wagon or a wheelbarrow. I
was thinking like a beach
something.
Cart. I mean, basically, you know, those fold up carts that you take to the beach, something like that.
Yeah. And that would obviously help, and he could get further back using less effort. However, at some point, he would have had to have gotten her out of that wagon and carried her across some pretty rough terrain.
Mm-hmm.
It was very hilly. It was very rocky. There was a lot of very thick vegetation. And I mean, like you said, it was a lot of effort for us not carrying anything, just going on that search to get around.
Yeah.
So, you know, the thought of him carrying her body through that would be extremely difficult. This would have had to have been done in the middle of the night because, again, this is a park that's very populated. It's filled with people during the day. And as we saw, the only entry point to that park is a parking lot, and there is a building maintained by Manassas Parks and Rec, I guess.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah,
So,
I mean, but it is a municipal building.
It's a municipal building that has cameras all over it.
Yeah, all around it. So, yeah, it would be hard to pass by, and you kind of had to pass by that building to get from the parking lot to the woods. But what we did find toward the end of our search is that there are actually neighborhoods that butt up against the park, and you could access the park through those neighborhoods. However, the way those neighborhoods are is you would basically have to go through somebody's backyard in order to do that, which seems also pretty risky.
Yeah.
Even if it is the middle of, well, I mean, especially if it's the middle of the night, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that parking lot is like the only official entry point, but there are other ways to get in. But again, it would be going across private property.
Yeah. I think it would be very difficult for him to have taken her in that park.
Right. Now, just according to his Facebook posts and things, which, the other thing is he was interviewed by a Nepali news station, and he gave an interview that said he wasn't really keeping up with social media. You know, he's got these like important jobs and he's not on social media. And like, I don't understand why he said that, because you look at his Facebook page and that dude is one of those guys who just posts everything all the time on Facebook. Like, he is a very active Facebook user and has been for years, constantly. And so just from a basic perusal of his public posts, and I haven't even gone that deep, you know, he also enjoyed going fishing. He also enjoyed going hiking. I mean, he's talked about going hiking in Great Falls. He does enjoy outdoor activities. So even though Blooms Park is, you know, very close to their house, there are a lot of other outdoor places that he is aware of and, comfortable with as well. Yeah, so for me, going to the search, the reason why I really wanted to go, and I'm glad you went along with me, there are a couple of reasons. One, it was 45 minutes from our house. She's a member of our community, and we had the opportunity to help. And so it was important to me to go do that. Two, I think it's incredibly important to show the police that people care and to come out in a show of force. And to me, that was a big part of the search yesterday. 50 people came on a Thursday afternoon and got ticks all over us and scratched to hell. And,
I think most of us didn't know her.
No, yeah. I think most of the people, were strangers. I think a couple people there knew her. When we were in the parking lot at the end, I saw a few women in scrubs who I think were her coworkers.
Yeah.
But I think mostly it was strangers. But these cases, if public pressure is not put on police departments, it's just so easy for them to get pushed down to the bottom of the pile when they're not immediately solved. And the more you show up for somebody who's a missing person, the harder it is for that to happen. And so I wanted to do our part, in some small way to help show that this is important, that she deserves to be found, that the police really need to keep working on this. And there are a lot of people in the community who are here to hold them accountable. This has started to make national news. It started to make international news because obviously, it's all over the news in Nepal now as well. Oh, and I do want to speak to that for a moment as well, because this I just found out right before we started recording. When, the first couple days that I was aware of this, we had the timeline that I went over in the beginning of the episode, which is saying that she was last seen on July 31st, July 31st, July 31st. Then you kind of get into it and you go, wait, July 31st came from her husband. July 28th is the last day that anyone else heard from her.
Saw her.
So when did she actually go missing? Is July 31st even the right date? Or was he just giving that date to buy a few extra days, basically? So, I asked, was she scheduled to work, any of those days? From what I've been told, she was not scheduled to work until August 1st. And again, she worked part-time, so that makes sense. Now, Mamta's parents gave an interview to a Nepali news source, and it's a video interview. It is in Nepali, and it did not have subtitles, so I had no idea what was happening. So I asked on Facebook, because that's where it was posted, if anybody could translate. And so some very kind soul on Facebook did. So let me read what he wrote. So thank you, Raj, to translating this for me. He said, Mom says they last talked on July 30th. Now, I want to say right off the bat, and this is something that somebody else pointed out, if she's saying July 30th, depending on when that was on July 30th, because Nepal is way ahead of us, that could have been July 29th here. Right. So it was any time after, I believe he said 2 p.m., then on the 29th here, it would have been the 30th in Nepal. So all of these dates that her mom is talking about could be a day ahead of what they actually were here. All right. So keep that in mind, because we're going through a bunch of dates right now. So they last talked on July 30th. They used to talk every day for around 10 to 15 minutes. Every day. On July 31st, the call was not connected. She tried calling on August 1st. Still, the call did not get connected. She tried August 2nd. Call didn't get connected. On the 3rd, she tried calling her son-in-law, Naresh. He did not answer. So then she contacted somebody else she knew who lived here in the States, who's from Nepal. And this woman who lived here contacted Naresh and got in touch with him. Naresh told her that Mamta didn't pick up her mom's call because she was on her work duty for 3 consecutive days. And the lady conveyed the message to Mamta's mom accordingly. And now it's been 17 days and they haven't gotten any update.
3 consecutive days, and this was August 3rd?
Yeah, so basically he's saying that July 31st to the 2nd, when Mamta's mom was calling her, which could have been the 30th to the 1st, depending on, again, what time. But anyway, those 3 consecutive days, she was working, and that's why she couldn't talk to her mom.
But she wasn't scheduled to work.
She wasn't scheduled to work.
Mm-hmm.
And when Naresh was interviewed by that reporter, that's not what he told the reporter.
Right.
He said that she'd taken off before, and he thought that that's what she had done again, that she needed some time to herself.
Once again, the story's not adding up.
Not only that, and again, it does sound like there was tension between Mamta, Naresh, and the in-laws, maybe on both sides.
Sure.
Maybe there are reasons that are innocent as to why he wouldn't pick up phone calls from her parents and why he hasn't talked to them since she's been missing. But according to her parents, he hasn't talked to them since she's been missing. Unless we're missing something, he gave 2 different versions of where she was between the 28th and when the police showed up at his door on August 2nd.
And he may have given a 3rd version. We don't know what he actually said to the police either.
Right. What it comes down to is this investigation is really only a week old, though she's been missing for 2 to 3 weeks. We don't know what happened to her. We don't know if she met with foul play, although Manassas Park Police has classified her as an involuntary missing person.
Right.
So it doesn't sound like they believe that she walked away.
Yeah.
But we do not know what happened. We don't know what Manassas Park is doing behind the scenes. What we do know is that a woman who has claimed to be in a marriage that she no longer wanted to be in, who is a well-liked, responsible, caring pediatric nurse, who is a mother of an 11-month baby girl who is her entire world, has not been seen in several weeks. She needs to be found. Her story needs to get out there. And pressure needs to continuously be put on the police to do the most thorough investigation possible. So I wanted to do this episode in order to use our platform in hopes of advancing that cause just a little bit further. We're going to put both of the Facebook groups in the show notes that have been formed to help coordinate search efforts for Mamta. If you're not local, join it anyway, just so you can, keep up with what's going on. Sharing always helps. There are also opportunities to donate. Nadia has a GoFundMe that she's been using for supplies to make more posters and supplies for the search and rescue. So like buying the whistles and the reflective vests and, water and things like that. There's talk about raising money for a private investigator. There are a bunch of ideas being floated about what to do with the money as well. So those opportunities are always available for you if you're not local. If you are local to the Northern Virginia area, there are more searches planned. The next one planned is in Blooms Park on Saturday, August 17th at 9 a.m. I've also heard about searches planned in Signal Hill Park and other areas. So there will be more information on those in the Facebook group if you do want to get involved. But like I said, we have this platform. I wanted to use it. And all we care about is finding out what happened to Mamta and bringing her home as soon as possible. Mamta Kafle has been missing from Manassas Park, Virginia since around July 31st, 2024. Anyone with information on her whereabouts is asked to contact Manassas Park Police Department at 703-361-1111. 1136. Detective Ventura is in charge of her case. You can see all the sources for this episode along with photos and videos at our website, andthentheyweregone.com.
And be sure to follow us on social, and Then They Were Gone Pod on Facebook and at ATTWG Pod on Instagram and TikTok. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe and consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It will help new listeners find us. And the more people that listen, the more chances we have of bringing someone home.
And we'll see you here next week for a brand new episode.
See you next week.
And Then They Were Gone is hosted by Kona Gallagher and Ethan Flick. All research, writing, and editing is done by me, Kona Gallagher. Theme music is The Stork by Ketsa. Additional music is provided by Kai Engel. And Then They Were Gone is a Little Monster production.